Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martirano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. All right, here we are, a regular spot, hanging on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. It's great about hanging. Everybody knows where the corner is, or hope they're finding it. Then you just sit around and see who wanders by. At least that's the image we're doing it. So we couldn't be more delighted to have a terrific guy who's he's great to hang with, but he's just a font of unbelievable information. Joining us on the corner this time out is our friend John White Jr. We're going to tell you specifically why John joins us today, but I would need a whole show and a half to list John's accomplishments and his resume. First, let me say hi, John. How are you?
Steve, I'm doing great.
So let me tell people who John White Jr. is just in a thumbnail sketch, because it would take me 2 days to list his resume. John's a former Pennsylvania State Rep. He was a former Philadelphia City Councilman. He was Secretary of Welfare for the state of Pennsylvania. He headed up Philadelphia's federal housing program. He has an amazing record in leadership, both legislatively and in other branches, executive branches of government. He's managed loads of people, and from his earliest work to stopping gang warfare and prison reform, and he's worked on Wall Street, worked for the Democratic National Committee. John has really dedicated his life to tough assignments and public service, and we welcome him, as I said, to the corner. John is now president and CEO of an organization that any community in the country would be proud to call their own, but we're lucky here in the Philadelphia area where they are home-based for the work they've done for 5 decades now with regard to providing thousands of people throughout this tri-state area with the mental health, mental illness, substance abuse, and treatment through their services. We'll find out more about the consortium straight ahead. But John, before we start, since we're all hanging here on the corner, a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in West Philadelphia. I started out at Broad and Christian, and then my parents moved out to West Philadelphia on Sansom Street. Went to all the schools here, Bryant Elementary and Shaw Junior High and West Philadelphia High School during our basketball days, heydays.
Well, is West Philly High? Is West Philly High the Speed Boys? Was that the name?
Yes, it. That's it. The Speed Boy. That's right. Gene Banks, Chuck Scott. I mean, we had a bunch of them.
Yeah. You have brothers and sisters?
I lost my brother to a drug overdose. It's a sad occasion.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of irony associated with that, and being at the consortium. Unfortunately, he bought methadone from the clinic, illegally, of course, and went home and OD'd. And then I end up at the consortium. Can you believe it?
No, I mean, yeah, I can. I mean, you have always managed to find out where you are most needed. As I said, a lifetime of public service. So, John, where did you hang at Cobb's Creek? Where did you guys hang, or didn't you?
Well, I had a very strict father, Steve, and standing on the corner was a no-no.
Yep.
But I only got caught a couple times hanging out.
Well, it's kind of interesting because we're having a lot of fun creating our virtual corner. But, now that you mention it, in certain communities, hanging was not a benign kind of rite of passage. It was not a place where people just hung around and figured out what they were going to do on Friday night. Some communities, as your dad correctly identified, the corner was not a good place, right?
Yeah, you know it. And back then, you had issues. There were, gangs. We fought, but no killing, no shooting, no stabbing. In fact, you may remember this, Steve. When we got to a fight, we used to call it a fair one. Remember that?
Well, there were rules, right?
Did you ever hear that?
There were rules.
Yeah, there were. And it really was a social gathering. I mean, that's where you saw the other kids on the block or in the neighborhood. That's where you organized your half-ball games and play football in the street, stickball. these young people today don't know anything about stickball or halfball. Well, that was our form of great, outdoor recreation.
Right.
Right. Most of us started playing in the street. Today, everything is so organized. You know what I mean? You're in the AAU, you're in the league. With us, we were in Sayre Schoolyard playing basketball, or in the middle of the street playing tackle football.
With no equipment, right?
No equipment.
Yeah, of course not.
No, you have any equipment?
No, of course not.
I tore so many pants from playing in the street that it was remarkable.
Well, John, I hope your father will forgive us for dragging you back onto our corner.
Don't get me wrong. I never got caught. Okay.
Now I got it.
My father used to get home at 4:30 in the afternoon, and I knew where I had to be before 4:30.
All right.
All
right, I get it. Now I get it. Now, so we won't drop a dime on you. Don't worry about it. John, let's talk about as I said, there's a whole range of places that you've worked and done remarkable work, and we'll get to some of that. But of course, you're here as the president and CEO of the Consortium. Again, people in Philadelphia should know about this organization, 5 decades in existence, and it's really the model of how something on a grassroots levels can grow and have a big impact. Can you tell us first, before what you guys provide in terms of services and advice, can you tell us who the community is that you serve?
We serve all of West Philadelphia, but yet, if you look at our participants, they come from every zip code in the city, and in the surrounding counties. It's about 18,000 people that come through our doors on an annual basis, and we're fortunate that any number of our programs serve families and individuals who are from different neighborhoods in the city. Our family-based program, for example, we have families that we serve as far as away as Allentown, if you can believe it. So we've really grown, and some of the things that we do are unique and they're not available through other agencies, and so people seek us out, as well does the government entities, like the city will seek us out for special programs that we're operating. Upper Darby, our buddy, remember Mike Chitwood?
Absolutely.
Philly, and now he was Upper Darby. He just retired, but they would reach out to us for different, programs that we operate to try to meet the special needs of some families. So they come from all over the city and the surrounding county areas.
It's, correct me if I'm wrong, but 5 decades ago, the sense must have been that you can't sit around and expect the government to come in and fix everything all the time. Sometimes they can't fix anything. Was the consortium created with that notion in mind that you got to do it ourselves, at least at the beginning?
Well, back in '68, with the passage of the Mental Health Act, a group of individuals from university, West Philadelphia is rich in its educational history, with Penn, just Drexel, Phillips College of the Sciences. Well, they all came together, along with representatives of the community, to talk about how they were going to organize a community-based effort to provide assistance to individuals who were running into mental health or substance abuse problems. That's where the name came from. It was a consortium of dedicated individuals who wanted to be available to provide services right there in the community, as opposed to having to go into a hospital or having to relocate. It was an effort back then to try to meet people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it has evolved over the years, and we've held on to that notion. We try to meet people where they are. It's changed a lot, and the virus, now you can do telehealth. You see, telehealth was not available for low-income individuals and low-income families. The regulations were so stringent that none of us could participate in it. And then all of a sudden, on a Monday afternoon, we went from doing face-to-face therapy to Tuesday morning doing telehealth. Well, as nervous and as afraid as we were, because there had been no advance notice, no advance training, we didn't have any idea how this was going to work out, Steve. You know? Are you going to be able to, people don't want to talk about their problems over the telephone?
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? More people take advantage of the telehealth than were taking advantage of our services before we were doing telehealth. It was a matter of convenience, and our clinicians got really comfortable in having a conversation like they were standing on the corner. That's what telehealth was like, okay? You didn't have all that formal stuff, and it's really working. The one area where we struggle, and we're trying to figure it out, because everybody doesn't have technology. You know, everyone can't have a Zoom meeting. So your group gatherings, your group therapies have suffered. And I want to talk about that a little later in terms of what that has meant to people in recovery, to not have that kind of social interaction and support that they normally would have in that setting. That was the whole point. It was to take better control of our own lives and to work with people who have a problem, knowing that there was that stigma out there. They didn't want people to know.
Well, that's what, you know, I want to stop you for a second and ask you whether this is a correct impression of the community that you guys really focus on. You mentioned low income. These are working people. These are not people just lying around. And in that community, I'm guessing that there is a long-standing kind of tradition that when things bother you, whether they're mental health issues or even physical health issues, you sort of shoulder on, you know, particularly mental health issues. I think in that community, it's not so much, there's a stigma, of course, but it's also a sense of, come on, man up, get out there and go to work. Don't worry about it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was the blues.
Exactly.
You were just feeling down today.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Not realizing that sometimes it's more than just feeling down, and it's more than just the blues.
Yeah, sometimes you wake up and notice that you've had these things for 40 years, your whole life, and suddenly you go, you know what?
How about it?
It's not a bad day. It's a bad deal.
I like that. Can I use that?
You got it, John. John White Jr. is our guest. He is president and CEO of the Consortium. They serve the tri-state area that we're in, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, with mental health and substance abuse services across a wide range of that area. John, let's talk specifically about what impact. Nobody needed this pandemic. Nobody needed this. Whatever problems we had going on in our lives, this thing has just exacerbated every one of them. That's true in your community of people that you service?
And it's not just those who we serve, but it's the people who do the service as well. You know, they live in the community, and they're impacted by the same things everyone else does. One of the things that I've done or we've done during this period is also make sure that our clinicians, the people who are essential workers, those heroes, that they have an outlet, that we pay attention to their mental health status as well. Because you can't help anyone else if you can't help yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, we're trying to make sure that we provide the kind of emotional support that our employees need in order for them to continue to be effective. We've discovered how important that is. We've had about a half a dozen people who have tested positive for this virus. 3 of our nurses who dispense methadone for in our addictions program tested positive, you know, for this virus. And so we've taken extra precautions going forward with this. And we learned that we're not immune from it. We've been impacted. Our families have been impacted. And so it's not just them having to support the individual that is really struggling and that seeks us out or that we're in touch with, but their own families have been impacted by this in negative ways as well. And so hats off to these heroes.
You're not kidding.
You know?
John, you know what else is fascinating is that, you know, look, calamities like this pandemic affect every single soul on the planet. And we all know they fall disproportionately on the least among us.
Exactly.
And if you look around, I love the term essential workers. How come the essential workers make the least amount of money, have the least
Yeah.
amount of services, and yet they are essential? These people are not only putting their lives on the line, but then they go home at night and they got to worry about their families.
Well, and Steve, plus, that whole thing we mentioned earlier about the stigma. Think about this. When's the last time you saw essential workers representing a mental health therapist? What we hear about essential workers are the hospitals,
Yes,
right?
right.
The nurses. They don't traditionally or not naturally look at that mental health therapist or that addictions counselor as being essential. Yet, they really, really are. And you'll remember in the beginning when they were talking about essential workers, they weren't talking about this field. They weren't talking about the need to make sure that we were able to address the mental health needs of the people, the behavioral health needs of the people who've been being affected by this. I think we've come around now to fully understand the impacts and the depth of need for these individuals to be available to assist people who are really, really struggling. It's a remarkable thing to see. And hats off to them, not just to those who work with me at the consortium, but across this city. There are agencies that are similar to ours, and those people are right there every day. See, we didn't miss a day. Can you believe that? We were open every single day. Everyone who needed service got it. We looked at our census. Everyone on our census we have been in touch with. We have made contact with during this period. And so we really have put our shoulder to the wheel and trying to do our part to, assist people to get through this. And then you have to prepare for the return of some type of normalcy. Can't define what it is at this point, but you've got to be ready for this thing to really change. And God forbid, if we have to go through this again, it'll be back to the drawing table.
Yeah, indeed. John White Jr., President and CEO of the Consortium, with us to talk about the behavioral health services they provide. There's a whole bunch of them. We're going to get to them straight ahead. But I mentioned to you, John, that we're now in the wonderful world of podcasting. So, my guys tell me, hey, Steve, you got to remember to get these people to follow us. So I got to take a moment here, which is strange for me because, I grew up like you thinking, who's that guy following me? But now apparently it's a big
deal.
So I gotta remind people to follow us here on the Behavioral Corner, and you're not in your car. It's not that hard. Follow us on Facebook and on Instagram and on Twitter if you like, and don't forget to look for us wherever finer podcasts can be had.
Every storm runs out of rain, according to the great Maya Angelou. Her words can remind us of one very simple truth, that storms do cross our paths, but they don't last forever. So the question remains, how do we ride out this storm of COVID-19 and all the other storms life may throw our way? Where do we turn when issues such as mental health or substance abuse begin to deeply affect our lives? Look to Retreat Behavioral Health. With a team of industry-leading experts, they work tirelessly to provide a compassionate, holistic, and affordable treatment. Call to learn more today. 855-802-6600. Retreat Behavioral Health, where healing happens.
John, let's take a look specifically at some of the services that you guys provide. We've talked about a little bit about the mental health piece and the addiction treatment services you provide, but I know you have a pretty robust children's behavioral health arm at the consortium. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and in today's context, Steve, that's a whole nother issue. We've been providing services to children for decades. Transportation is provided to come to our clinic at 2821 Island Avenue in Southwest Philadelphia, where we have all the qualified, credentialed clinicians on staff who are working with the children and with their families, as well as a couple of, I guess what you would call proven or evidence-based programs that have proven very, very effective in working with kids and families. we place a lot of emphasis on the family structure because children are attached to a family. They're not out there, wandering around by themselves, so to speak, in most cases. It's a family that needs to help. Parents need to know how to cope with children who may have a behavioral health issue, what to do, how to respond to unacceptable behavior, how to handle an angry child. So we try to not only provide the necessary treatment and support to children, but to do likewise for the families and to help them be able to understand what's going on with their child and how best they can help and support them. Every parent has one goal, and that is to protect their children from harm. And it is a traumatic experience when you realize that your child is having issues that go beyond your capabilities as a parent. The sense of guilt, the sense of remorse, all have to be addressed through this intervention. And this time of year with this COVID mess, you got to remember things were closed, so kids couldn't get to daycare. Kids can't get to the clinic, for help. They're at home, and telephones don't work for them. You're not going to hold the attention of an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old, on the phone to try to help them. It just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, parents, of course, even now that we're slightly reopened, are reluctant to send their children back out into the world, so to speak, for fear that the disease might impact on them. And so, our children's program is really, I'm very proud of them. They've done a tremendous job in staying in touch with families and parents. And we opened on Monday, and we had 19 children on our first day, which was remarkable.
One of the reasons we reached out, because you're a great resource for this stuff anyway, but it's July is designated as National Minority Health Month.
Okay.
And I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that this designation is about is pointing out some of the disparities between groups and services they have. Is that disparity narrowing or widening? I mean, how available are these services to everybody now?
I think that it's come see, come saw. I think you're seeing some evidence of recognition of it. I maintain that through this COVID virus and identifying at-risk populations like African Americans, like in our community, some of that is being fueled by decades of neglect.
Mm-hmm.
It's been about our failure to adequately message diabetes, to adequately mention high blood pressure, and getting people into care, having folks receive the services necessary to treat that. So a lot of this, I think, has been the accumulated effect of an absence of focus on the needs of these marginal communities to have their healthcare issues identified, met, and how about educating them as to the importance of maintaining their health through these things. All of that stuff is avoidable.
Mm-hmm.
You can eat right and take care of diabetes. You can exercise to minimize high blood pressures. But if you're not doing that, net effect of the continuing ravaging of your body and your emotional health just goes on and on and on. And this is the accumulation of our failure to address those issues all along, I'm afraid.
Well, this is a great moment to mention something else, of course, that we have failed to address, and that is the effects of racism in our society. And as though we needed something else to deal with in the middle of a pandemic, we have had a series of tremendous civil unrest. You've seen it all. You know what I'm talking about. Associated with police violence. You go way back as a public servant. You have seen these outbreaks before. I mean, you and I are around the same age. No one's older than I am, so you probably aren't either. We've been through this before. We've seen cities burn. We've seen people's frustration erupt into both peaceful and not so peaceful expressions. How do you not grow disheartened that it seems like, well, here we are again, 1964, 1968, Watts? What keeps you going?
Wow, that's an unfair question because I could only speak for myself in that regard. Um, it saddens me that in 2012, the same issue, particularly around police, has been around all these years, decades. Remember the pushback against Rizzo?
Sure.
It didn't have anything to do with his policies. His policies didn't outright discriminate, but it was the image that was created of him as a police officer. And the fear, I mean, the literal fear that people in some communities like mine had of Mayor Rizzo and the police. Now, the difference was, in most cases, you knew who the police were, and they knew who you were.
Mm-hmm.
But there was always this fear element. To see it manifest into the violent behaviors of our police officers is really disheartening. And it's crazy because we know that the vast majority, 99.9% of our police officers are fine people, and they do their jobs, and they do it the right way, as Larry Brown would say. You know, they do it the right way. But it's those individuals that give the entire police community the black eye,
Yep.
the bad name.
Yep.
To then want to take that narrative, right, and accuse folks of painting this broad brush that all cops are bad. We know better than that. We know better than that.
Yeah. Or that all people in the streets are looting.
Tell me about it.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
I wore a mask early on in the beginning of this into a store, and it was like the person was trying to figure out who's going to rob him, you know?
Yeah.
And I asked the guy, I probably asked the store owner, can I help you? Okay.
Am I making you nervous? Yeah.
It's not going to go away.
Well, you know what?
It's
You
not going
know
away.
what? You know what, John? Here's something remarkable. I'd like to get your take on it. This virus. I know it looks like we are overwhelmed by morons in our society and our leadership, and that's true to a certain extent. But I mean, there's some very, very, very smart people, very dedicated, smart people working on managing this disease, and they will come up with a vaccine. And yet, another virulent disease has raged through this country forever, and that's racism.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just racism. We will conquer this disease well in advance to getting to the core of racism in this country. Having said that, though, John, do you think this time might be different? I know that's the worst kind of wishful thinking, but do you think this time it may be different in terms of, moving ahead on racism?
I think you'll see some changes. I think you'll see a legitimate effort on the part of folks in government that will bring about that change. It's not just a change in laws. It's a change in attitude. You can change a law. That's a group of people getting together and having a vote and on something. But changing attitudes is the real challenge. And that's going to take, unfortunately, many more generations to overcome. That's my fear.
Yeah, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. John White Jr., President and CEO of the Consortium, is with us. He's talking about this grassroots organization that for over 5 decades has been helping thousands of people throughout our area with the challenges they confront with mental illness, substance abuse, and a wide range of behavioral health issues. And we wanted to bring John on because it is, as I said, July National Minority Mental Health Month. So we're glad John joined us. So there are people within the sound of who can hear this in this area. If they want to get a hold of you guys, what do they have to do?
Well, our main number is 215-596-8100. And you can follow the prompts and be directed to the program or the individuals the agency that you're trying to reach. You can also go to our website, www.consortiuminc.org, and you can see the full array of the services and projects that we're engaged in. We are 24-hour service that we're available, so you can call us any time of day or night. And we'll be able to respond to your particular inquiry or to your needs.
You are also a 501c, which makes you a nonprofit. So let me guess
We're a nonprofit.
Let me guess you welcome donations.
Yes, we do. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because in 50 or more years that we've been together, we've never been a fundraising organization. And Steve, we turn no one away. Whether you're insured or not, you get the same service, the same help. If you need help, give us an opportunity to be of service to you.
Yeah, and you also don't turn people away based on anything. Race, color, gender,
nothing.
Religion.
Race, color, creed, nothing. Income status, nothing. Everybody gets enrolled into the same programs, and we try to design our programs to meet the individual needs as best that we can.
Yeah.
We don't use cookie-cutter approaches in most cases. We really do try to meet people where they are and address their particular needs.
I can't let you go, though, from the corner here without talking a little sports, because John knows me from the old days when I used to babble on incoherently about teams in the Philadelphia area. Baseball's coming back. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, but what happened was interrupted.
Yeah, people got to get ready for that, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, look, God forbid, what happened if Aaron Nola got sick? You know?
I hear you.
And couldn't pitch. What does that do to both the team, but also the fan? Now all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, the potential of serious disruption is real. And I think that will magnify the depression
I agree.
that sports guys like me and you are going to go through. Look, when I realized that Ray Dittinger, wasn't that optimistic about completing the football season, my heart dropped.
You know what? I hear you. Listen, I hear you. It may all, as hard as it is to get your head around, it may be better for everybody to go, see you next year, then get it going and then take it
You're
away.
Killing me.
Yeah,
You're killing me, Steve.
I know, John. It's bad, but at least I don't have to go make a living talking about sports that ain't happening anymore. I feel
sorry for those guys.
Yeah.
They got to make up something, doing dumb stuff. Yeah.
Well, John, thanks so much. You and I still at some point are going to rendezvous for that cigar that we still have a little. We have a meeting.
Absolutely,
one of those.
Absolutely. Or you can come by and sit out on my patio, or smoke a cigar, get in the hot tub, relax, smoke a cigar, and just chat.
As long as we can socially distance in a hot tub, I'm in.
Not a problem at all.
John White Jr., President, CEO of the Consortium. John, it's always a delight. Again, thanks for your work and thanks for your time.
You take care now. Bye-bye.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.